Hey, good morning, everybody. Woo! Monday morning of a new week, just before Easter, so things are getting interesting. Um, I wanted to talk today about a concept of, well, let's look at the logic of it. But are we part of God? And there's a lot of spiritual lineages that say that we're part of Source, and everybody comes here as a fragment of Source for an experience. My favorite one is. Huh, shoot, I can't even remember the name of the book. But the name of the book basically says that we were part of God, and one day we said, well, what if we weren't a part of God? And in that instant, we were instant manifestors that was created. And to make all that happen, there was a part of us that separated off. We call it the ego. That's the duality that we live. But that ego basically said it became this like roadblock between us and being our fragment of God. And it protects us by not allowing us to have all our power, etc. So hearing something like that, and you don't have to believe it. This is just a logic and exploration for us. But if we're a fragment of God and we live multiple lifetimes and we're here to experience things, and if you believe in quantum physics and timelines and all these things, we fraction ourselves with every decision we make. So basically, what that means, it's kind of like a tree of life. Every possibility is actually explored. So some part of us goes and says yes, and the other part says no, and the other one is good, and the other one is evil, and it creates the multiverse. There's so much of it in TV and media and discussed nowadays. What if there is a multiverse and you've basically been the sum result of all possibilities? That's essentially what God wants to examine: is what if you're good? What if you're bad? What if you're nice? What if you're in love? What if you're married? What if you have kids? What if you don't have kids? And then we start to realize now we have other people in that multiverse, and now our realities have to overlap in some way, or else we have no commonality to be able to explore things, discuss things, to have experiences, etc. So now all of a sudden there's some collective alignment that happens with us and all the fragments around us to allow us to have an experience. We create soul contracts, we create good experiences, we create bad experiences, we live out all the possibilities so that God can be fulfilled. This willingness, this universal unconditional love is explored. So now if we start looking at that, and then we start to position that it's possible that we're part of God still, and just that source with the ego between us, and we all know that we're working through our ego and we're dealing with all the stuff that's ego that keeps us separate, that keeps us trying to take over and control and have power. Well, what if we're now God? What if all the things, let's say you've lived 1,000 lives in your past and this soul is learned all these things, what's the possibility that you live some of those good experiences and live some of those bad experiences? And if we go to the multiverse theory, you've done both sides. So if we now stand in what's going on in our reality, what's not working out, what we don't like, what we're making good and evil and bad and good, we're actually doing that to ourselves, because we're God and we had some fractional portion in this. If we stand here and say, I don't like this is bad, this is COVID's not a thing that's good or evil or whatever, and then we start taking self-responsibility, we step out of being that victim of it and saying, okay, I'm not going to allow this to happen again. Some fractal or fragment of me or one of my timelines chose that this exists so that we could experience power, and the people that are in it are experiencing power. It's not about evil, but once you get into power, you get pulled into decisions and you get pulled into darkness and other malevolences that exist. So what if now we stood and said, okay, I take responsibility for this? Just the mere acceptance of what is, rather than fighting it or saying this is awful and I don't want to be here and this isn't good. What if we just said, okay, I accept it, and any portion that I created, I hereby heal and send love to, and close up that timeline or that fraction of me that created that, so that in now our reality or my reality or whoever's reality we want to discuss it as, it's now healing. It's now resolved. We're not now waiting. We're not now going and having rallies and chasing people and being in a rebellion and all this kind of stuff. We solve it inside of us. So now all of a sudden we're taking our power back as God, and we're taking responsibility for the fact that we're both light and dark. And guess what? We find this balance, this beauty, this whole situation, good, bad, ugly, positive, whatever, is forming us. It's creating an awareness in us of all facets of ourselves. If we don't acknowledge the dark, we cut half of ourselves off. If we be too good, we lose out on the possibility of standing up for ourselves and other things. So as we're returning to balance, we're getting our power back in maybe our darkness. Maybe we can yell at a person and grab them by the collar and say, no way. That doesn't have to be violent, but that's now a statement of power. That's now a statement of we matter. What we want is important. So this whole process is us coming back and healing that ego and healing our fragmentation from our sourceness so that we can be our fullest expression of self again. That's like a mind blower. You start looking at it and saying, okay, well, my bad isn't really bad. My dark isn't really dark. Look at the darkness range that you can go into. You can be in your power and say, no freaking way. Or you can sit there and be a malevolent dictator that kills everybody because they don't listen or don't follow your rules. There's a range. And once we get in and we explore our triggers and our trauma and the darkness that we've experienced, etc., we'll find a spot where we're fully in that power, but we're not so wounded. We're not so traumatized. We're not scared. We're not